Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Family Wars webinar. This is the part 3 of a 3-part webinar series for family creation. My name is Philip Charlson. I am a senior MEP technical specialist for ATG. Again, this is the third part here of our family series, kind of a Star Wars theme if you haven't caught the first couple. So first off, a little bit about myself. I have been with a Autodesk reseller for 19 of the past 20 years. Spent a year as a BIM manager for a large national AEC firm. I've been managing, teaching, mentoring, giving all my knowledge to users in Revit since 2002 after Autodesk purchased Revit program. So I've been supporting the MEP and architecture companies since 2001. I do have the most certifications in the state of Minnesota for Autodesk. I think right now I'm at about 23. And I love Legos, and I definitely love some Star Wars. So tried to add a little bit of fun into my my webinars here, along with giving you a little bit of a learning experience for working with Revit families. So the whole point of the webinar here is, you know, again, we are in the final session of a 3-part trilogy. Not saying there could be possibility of some prequels, never know. But yeah, it's been on family creation, obviously for users that want to get started within their company to start developing some families. So we've been starting basically from scratch, and kind of going through some of the processes, some of the things that you may need to know as you're working with families. If you missed my first 2 sessions, you can go to the ATG website and check them out there. We also have a ATG USA YouTube page that you can go check those out. So look for Family Wars, the parts 1 and 2 out there. So again, our main goal here is just getting a better understanding of developing the Revit families the correct way. And what I mean by that is a lot of people get started with developing families, and they just kind of jump into it, not really knowing some of the processes there. So obviously the point of my webinars is to give you the right direction to follow as you are going in and creating the families. And you know, obviously going in and start and creating families for your company if that may be your role, or if you just want to create a family or 2 as needed within projects. So today's focus, I'm just going to do a very short review on the first couple webinars, and then we're going to get into working with shared parameters, and you're going to see how they're used within families and also within projects, and you get a better understanding of why and how important they are to your family creation. And then we'll also take a look at adding some materials into the family. So really 2 different topics there, but obviously a couple that are needed for family creation that I wanted to make sure that I got covered within the 3-part series. So first, a little bit, again, overview. I've shown this in all of my webinars, the same slide, maybe a different background, but you know, we're looking at you know, Return of the Jedi theme in this one. So if you have noticed, all the screenshots, they're all from that that film. But the important thing is, what's on there, the text, the 10 simple steps to creating a family. So these are things that I really follow to a T when I am creating families. And I've obviously totally expressed this throughout my webinars here. And not going to go through those in great detail. Again, you can check out some of the other webinars, but if you're taking screenshots of this webinar, this would be a good one to take a screenshot of and, you know, print it out, put it by your screen. So when you are developing those families, you not only have a cool Star Wars background, but you have a list of steps to go on and take within there. Now on to today's topics. First, we're going to take a look at shared parameters. I'm going to come to find that shared parameters are something that a lot of users sometimes are not totally aware of or how to go in and use them. And a lot of times they just simply use the project type parameters, family parameters that are defaulted when you're doing the family creation. They kind of skip over the shared parameters, but they are very valuable to use. I use them quite often. You'll see that they can be used in tags and title blocks, and those are typically where people start out with utilizing shared parameters. A shared parameter has to be used in a custom tag. So that is obviously where that comes into play. And then also for title block information, any type of data fields that you typically plug into a title block, those are typically shared parameters as well. You'll see that manufacturers obviously want to utilize and share more of their data. When you download any type of manufacturing data, you take a look at all the parameters. You typically see quite a few parameters specified within there. And for some, you can, the manufacturer will typically give you their shared parameter. Sometimes you need to ask for that, and that may be something that you can merge into your shared parameter as well. There's a little bit of work involved with it to make sure that it works correctly, but it is a possibility there. If you do have questions on that, get in contact with me. I can definitely help out with that, but I won't show that step within this webinar here. Also, keeping it consistent across families and into projects. So a lot of times, if you have users that are creating families and they're just using the base parameters, or they're adding new parameters and not using shared parameters, you can get some differences in how different users will give as far as parameter names. And you can't go in and reuse those that are internal within the family. Whereas a shared parameter is basically a text file, which is my last item here. And that text file is somewhere that's going to be placed out on your server somewhere that everybody can be able to access that. And if somebody needs to go in and use a parameter that's specified in that shared parameter file, you're pointed to that and go in and select on that and add that to your family. And again, it can be reused over and over and over again, and you don't have to worry about it being different from family to family. It is a time saver to have that shared parameter text file as well. Now, there's a couple differences here. There's a shared parameter and there's a project parameter. So some people get a little confused about the two. Project parameters are internal, so that means that they are part of the project. So a lot of times, if you're going to reuse project parameters, you might typically find them in a company template, so they don't have to consistently be created or brought into a particular project. Both of them can be added to multiple category levels. So what that means is that if I have a parameter, let's call it, just simply length, I can go in and add that to a number of different categories within the list. So if it's casework or plumbing fixtures or mechanical equipment, electrical equipment, I could have length as a parameter that could be defined for all of those different categories. And there's a checkbox that we can check for each of those different categories as we're going in and adding either a shared parameter or a project parameter to objects. Both of them can be scheduled, so that means you can add them as a column in the schedules that you go in and create. Big thing here, project parameters cannot be used for tagging, so only shared parameters can be used for that. Also, shared parameters can be grouped, so you can go in and group and create your own categories within the shared parameter file to not have a huge long list, which is typically what the project parameters can get to be, because there is no grouping specified for the project parameters. So that's your two differences there between the shared parameters and project parameters within Revit. All right, the next thing here, materials. So I'll kind of really changing topics there. Materials can be important. Obviously, typically a bit more for architecture. Architecture, obviously, you're seeing more of the materials. Whereas if you think maybe MEP or structure, even though you may still add materials to those, we're not going to see a nice, wood grain type material that's applied to something, or maybe some other type of wall or floor type material that an architect may use in their instances. Also, for materials, obviously they're utilized more for renderings. So when you want that pretty picture to show to a client, obviously you want to go in and add the right types of materials. You don't want to have everything set as default material. That'd look pretty bland. Also with materials, we have shared libraries and custom libraries. So for materials, what I mean by a shared library is that all Autodesk products really share the material library. So if you dig deep into your hard drive, you'll find the location of where all these material image files are located. I believe there's 3 folders, and very, very long list of materials within there. So those are ones that you're able to use right away. But you can also customize your own libraries. You can also add favorites. So if it's a material that you want to reuse from family to family, you may want to go in and add it to favorites, so it isn't something that you have to continue to look up in your typical shared type library. You can also go in and create your own materials. So you can typically bring in an already existing material from your shared library. You can go in and rename it, and you can give it different properties. You can go in and add new image files to the way that you want to show it. And then you can go in and save that to your favorites for future type instances there, and be able to go in and reuse that. So a lot of benefits to using materials, and I'll be going through that after we touch on the shared parameters. So I'm going to pop into a demonstration here with the shared parameters. So let me flip open Revit here. And what I've got here is a project, just simply called it Star Wars project, nothing I guess, out of the ordinary in here. It's just typically the architectural template, default template, right out of the box here. So when utilizing shared parameters, and you can go into the shared parameters in a project or in a family setting. I'm just happen to be in a project setting here. I can go up to the Manage tab and click on Shared Parameters here. You notice that the project parameters is right above that as well. Again, today we're going to kind of concentrate on the shared parameters here. So when I go in and click on that, if you do not have a shared parameter file set up already, you can click on Create, and you want to set up a location typically on your server so that everybody can see this same location. If you already have a shared parameter file set up for your company, you want to click on Browse and find where that shared parameter is. So I may need to talk to your BIM manager or CAD manager and find out where their shared parameter file is. And if they don't have a shared parameter, you may want to tell them, hey, it's time to get a shared parameter file. Let's get one set up. Now, by default, when you don't have one, you're not going to have any groups in here, you're not going to have any parameters. There's not going to be a whole heck of a lot that you can do within here other than click on New for Groups. Now, I did go in and create one, but if I do create a new one here, just simply click on Create, basically add a name to it, and it adds the TXT extension on the back end of it. So it is just simply a text file that you can open up in the notepad and be able to take a look at that information. So I did create this one called starwars.txt, so that is completed on mine. If I want to go in and create a new parameter group, I would just simply click on New, and I can go in and give it a name here. So I'm just going to simply call this one Materials, because I'm going to have some different parameters related to materials here for my project. Now, the shared parameter file is not a project specific thing. It is a company specific thing. That means when you're going in and creating these, you're not creating them, you know, just for that one project that you're working on. You're working on it to build it up for all of the projects that you work on. So be thinking about how you want to group the parameters and how you want to name your parameters. You want to have a good naming convention for your parameters that makes sense for users when they want to go in and select the parameter to be used in a family or to be used within a project for scheduling. So if you do have multiple users that are developing families for your company, you probably want to have a little meeting to discuss how you want to name those. Because once you go in and start creating parameters, you don't really want to go back and delete them and change them. Because once you start using them within projects and families, you're kind of stuck with what you got there. So another big thing, make sure you check your spelling. Dealing with companies, I've dealt with some really bad spelling errors, and there is no way that you can go in and change that. It is locked in. You're kind of stuck with that. So I created a materials group here. Once I create the material group, you'll see that now I can go in and add new parameters. I also have an option here that I can delete a parameter group. I can go in and rename that. So I do have those options now. But what I want to do here is I want to go in and create a new parameter here. And we're going to, again, kind of keep it the Star Wars theme here. So for my parameter property here, I'm just going to call this one Material, and we're going to call this one Empire. And when you go in and name this, you have the option here to set what discipline that you want. So right now I'm just going to make this common, but if you were going into a discipline specific type item here, and you go in and select it, the type of parameters are going to change based on that discipline that you're selecting. So here with HVAC, it's giving me HVAC items. If I go down to electrical, we got electrical items within here. In this case, I'm just going to keep it common. And then for type of parameter, this is an important step as well. For my material, so I'm kind of blending the two things together here today, the shared parameters and materials. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to change this to material for the type of parameter. Now another step that you can do is you can add a tooltip. So if you think there's going to be some confusion as to what a parameter means to the end user, you may want to go in and just simply type in what that particular parameter stands for. So they don't have to come back and wonder, okay, what is that? Or they wind up not knowing what it is and going in and creating a new parameter that is exactly the same as that. So give a little bit of a description to that if you feel it's needed. All right, so I go in and click OK, and we add that one here. I'll add another one in here, and we'll call this one Material Rebellion. And we'll go in and add that one as material as well. I'll hit OK, and it adds that in there. Now I'm going to go in and add another group in here. So we're going to call this one Accessories. All right, and we'll go and create a couple new parameters for that. Now, if you were in on my other sessions, you knew that I created an R2D2 unit. So we know R2D2 has a lot of fun tools, and I'm gonna create a group here for accessories for the R2 unit here, and basically for any droid that I go in and create. All right, so for this one, I'm gonna set it for common, and I'm gonna change or set this to yes, no. What that means is it will wind up giving us a checkbox, meaning yes, it does have that, or no, it does not have that as an option. So go ahead and click OK. I'm going to add just a couple more here. Let's see here. He's got a fusion welder. Everybody know what all the tools those droids have? We know he's got a hollow projector. And he's got that rocket booster too. Uses that in Return of the Jedi. All right, so I could continue this list on down here. Now, one thing I wanted to show you is if you made a mistake. So, let's say one of these, I put in text instead of a yes, no option. All right, so if I go in and click on one and click on properties, you'll see here that everything is grayed out. So I can't go back and modify this. It's kind of a fail-safe type thing because, again, if you're working with shared parameters, it's trying to protect you from changing something that may already be attached to the shared parameter that has been created within here. Now, if you know right off the bat, you just created it, it's not being used in anything, you can delete it out. So you can't modify it, but you can delete it. It does give you a warning message that, hey, if you go in and do this, it might cause a few problems. But at this point, I know I haven't added to anything, so I can remove that out of there. And then I can just simply go in and create that within here. I think this might be 2 words. Yeah. That might be something I need to look up there, but we'll just stick with the hollow projector there. And again, we'll set that to yes, no, click OK. And we've got some different parameters in here. So we've got 2 different groups, and we've got obviously multiple parameters specified within here. All right, so I go in and click OK. So I'm still in this project. If I go in and I go to my R unit here, so what we created before, and if I go to the manage and click on shared parameters, you'll see that we see the same list there. So whatever you open up, whether it be a family or whether it be a project, and go to your shared parameters, you're going to be able to see that same list. So that means that we can go in and, you know, be able to continue to create items and be able to add shared parameters to the particular objects. Now for this R unit, I want to go in and add those shared parameters to the unit here. So if I come up here and click on the family types, remember we, and last time we went in and we created some different heads for the R2 unit here, R4 and R5 units. And I want to go in and create those additional shared parameters that I've got set. So I'm going to come back down here and click on new parameter. And again, as new users get into Revit without some instruction, a lot of times they just continue to use the family parameter here. And they have to go in and fill in a new parameter name, set the discipline, type of parameter, group parameter under, add a tooltip, and they just continue that process. But if we have a shared parameter, I can just click on that. You notice that it grays these out. And I can go and click on select and it'll go to my list here. And I can go in and pick on each one. So if I choose the buzzsaw here, we're going to keep that under other. And you know, depending upon what we want to do for this droid, if it's going to be based on the type, meaning if it's going to be you know, part of the R2 unit, R4, R5 units that we have in there, we can go in and set it for that. If it's going to be a particular option based on each one that's getting placed, I would go in and set it as an instance type parameter. I think for this one, I'm gonna set it as a type parameter, and we'll go in and click OK, and you'll see that it adds buzzsaw to that. So if I go in and add a couple more here, so as you can see, it's a pretty easy steps there. I'm just simply going in and selecting on each of the instances there. And I've got each of them selected here. Now, also in the family types, if I wanted them all kind of grouped together, I might choose my move up, move down type option here. So I'll put all these options together here. There we go. So now at this point for a yes, no, I've got each of my different units here. So my R2 unit is going to be fully loaded there. We go to an R5, okay, maybe it doesn't have the rocket booster for that one. This one here doesn't have the rocket booster or the hollow projector, just has buzzsaw and welder, so it must be just a real working type droid there. So I've gone in and basically set those as particular options within there. Now if I go ahead and click OK, and if I had physically modeled some of those components, I'm just going to take the body here for an example. When I go in and pick on a particular item, I can go in and set the visibility of that object. So I can go in and pick on those particular objects so that if it's a yes or no, that means yes, it will show it when it's placed within a design. Or if I got it set for no, then it's not going to show up within that particular design there. So with each component that you go in and create, you can obviously go in and set those yes, no type parameters for that. Now also for the materials, you know, I created some material information within there as well. So if I go and create another new parameter here, we'll do shared, and I'll go in and select on my materials this time. So I got material empire, and it defaults to materials and finishes. I'm going to set this one here to instance. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing here. We'll do a new parameter, and this one's going to be rebellion here. All right, so this will kind of lead me into the materials, but I'm going to come back here to share parameters as well. So with materials, when I define those, and by the way, these did not have to be shared parameters to use materials. If I did go up here, I could set that as family parameter, and I could go in and create that as a material as well. So just kind of blending, again, the two together here, but again, you can set that as a family parameter or a shared parameter. However, when you apply a material to a family, we have these value fields within here. When I go in and click within the cell, you'll get this little box here with the 3 dots on it. If I go in and click on that, it's going to open up to the material browser dialog box. All right, so there's 3 different areas that we really have to be concerned with here. Up at the top here, kind of on the top left-hand side, these are all the materials that are currently residing in this particular file. So these are ones that I can just simply go in and use right away. Now, none of these are looking anything like what I want to use for the R2 unit here. So I need to take a look and see what other options there are. So down at the bottom here, you'll see the material libraries. And if I click on this little double arrows, you'll see how it kind of pops up there. And right now I'm not seeing anything, but if I click on the home, it's going to expand and give me my favorites and the AEC material. So these are the ones that are right out of the box that really every Autodesk product has. So if they're utilizing any materials in a file, you're going to have these material folders available for you. Now, if I go in and double click on it, you're going to see a long list of different types of materials. So I'm just kind of scrolling through the whole list there. So there's a lot of materials within there. Now, I would not suggest scrolling through trying to find what you're looking for. Instead, up at the very top, you have a search option. This comes in very handy. So if you're looking for a very specific material, let's say I want to look for aluminum. So I can just start typing in aluminum. I don't have to type in the whole thing. And it will look to see what I have in my current file. There's nothing in there. And then down at the bottom, we have everything that's available in the out of the box library. So it's anything that has aluminum in the name, or there's a descriptor identity fields that could have aluminum in it as well. If I just click on the first one here, it's going to give us the properties of that particular material. So we can take a look at the identity, we can look at the appearance, physical, and the thermal properties of that particular material. So when we look at the identity, you can see, just aluminum, description aluminum 6061 in the metal class. There's also other options that you can go in and add more specific information for that particular material. So if you're defining it for a particular manufacturer and they have specifics on a manufacturer for that particular material, you could possibly go in and add that in there. That is potentially information that you could schedule within a project if you want to. You can also add keynotes to it. So if you're utilizing the keynoting feature within Revit, that's an option. And you can also define a specific mark number for that as well. With the appearance, you're going to see some differences between the different types of materials that you use. Just depending upon like if you use a steel material or if you use a wood material, a paint material, you're going to have different properties that you can go in and change regarding that. So the appearance for the particular aluminum here, it's giving you some information related to that, giving us some different keywords that it's looking up when you do a search. The color representation, the roughness, if there's any bump type patterns, that is an image file that gives it a particular texture type appearance, and then cutout for it. Now, again, if I go in and select on different instances here, we might get some different looks to that. So here's a anodized dark bronze, but as you can see here in the keywords, aluminum is also added into it. So even though it's not actually in the name, it's in the keywords to look up that information. As you can see, this one's got a different type of color representation. If I come up here and let's say I want to look for any wood type material. So I got a lot of different wood type species here. So when I choose redwood, you can see that the appearance gives us a total different look than with the aluminum. Here it's actually pulling a JPEG image. So when you're doing a rendering, it's giving us the actual wood grain look of that redwood type. If I wanted to change this to a wood type that was different from out of the box here, let me actually go in and pull this redwood in here. So if I want to add something into my current project or family, we can just click on the up arrow here and you'll see it added in here. It'll also allow us to go in and make some modifications to that. So now if I come back here in appearance, I can go in and click on the location of where this JPEG is, and it's going to open up the folder here where you have all of your image files. I have never counted how many image files there are in here, but there are a lot. So there's some that are not being used in the out-of-the-box library that you have in the list here. So you can go in and choose a different type within here. So let me choose something different here. So I'm going to choose this white ash amaretto here. And we'll go ahead and click on open. You can see how much that changed there. Now, obviously, I don't want to keep that name redwood there. So I can go in and change this here to white ash amaretto. And if there's anything in here, here's redwood. I want to get rid of that out of there. So we're going to get rid of that component there. And I could put in ash as a option here. And we could add amaretto. So if you were looking for this in the future, those would be some keywords that it could look up. Now I changed the pattern, the image file that's being used for this, but I can also go in and change the graphic representation of this as well. So when I go to a shaded mode, I'm going to go in and use the render appearance, so it gives me kind of the brownish look there. We can also go in and add surface patterns. So if this was applied to you know, a wall or surface of a particular item, maybe we'd want to have some kind of a drafting pattern or a model pattern to use for that. And we also have an option here for cut patterns. So if we're looking at a cut representation of it, it's sitting in a cut plane, or we'll create a section cut, we could also go in and add a hatch pattern to that instance. All right, so if I go and click apply here, why did that not change? Oh, I changed the appearance name here. So I'm going to copy that, and I want to change the identity name here. And I do not know the descriptive name of that, so I'm just going to leave that one blank. But you can see that now I have the white ash amaretto as a wood option in my project. Now, if I want to save that and be able to use that in some future projects, I can go and right click on that. I can choose add to favorites. And you'll see that in my favorites, now I have the white ash amaretto as an option that I can choose in any future projects or any future families that I go in and create. So it's relatively easy to go in and create your own materials for your projects or families, and kind of develop your own little library to be able to reuse that same information over and over again. So I'll go ahead and click OK out of here. And as you can see, our material for Rebellion is actually white ash amaretto. So that will be an interesting color here for our R2 unit. So to go in and apply that material, now, as you can see, I've added it in there, but nothing on this droid looks like a wood type pattern. So my next step here is if I go in and click on a component, so I'm just clicking on one of my extrusions here, I can go over to the properties palette, and you'll see here material says by category. Now, mistake a lot of people use is they just simply click in here and they go in and select on that material that they want defined for that. However, I do not want to do that here. I'm going to click cancel. And what I want to do instead is click on this little button here. It's called Associate Family Parameters. So when I go in and click on that, I can go in and select on the parameter that I want that material to be defined by. And we want that to be defined by Rebellion there. And you can see now we got an R2 unit here with a lovely looking hatch there. So I would continue to do that. I could select on my other objects here, and I can go in and pick on my Rebellion here. So if I wanted to kind of change this up here a little bit, let's go back to our aluminum here again. And we'll go in and add, let's do the anodized red. See what that looks like. And our render appearance, oh yeah, that's gonna look nice. All right, so this one's gonna be kind of a split between the Empire and the Rebellion here. So we're gonna give it the Empire colors here. I guess this would be more of a Sith color, right? Let's see here. Why am I? Oh, so I am not seeing this because that is a part of a different family. So in that case, I would have to go in and add the shared parameters for that family that I've inserted in there. And after I go in and add that, I could associate the two together. So let me take this one here, edit that family. So there's our droid head there. And you'll see that this one does not have any materials assigned to it. So I can go in here and we'll just go in and add my two in here again. And let's see here, this was going to be instance, I believe. And we'll add the Rebellion in here, like so. So now I can go in and click on these, and let's say we'll add this one to Empire here. I think these are all connected. Oh, this one isn't. All right, so I got everything set here. It's defined as Empire. So I'm just going to save this, and we'll load it back into our project here. So we'll load it into our unit, overwrite that. And now, when I go in and pick on that, you'll see in the properties, I have now set their material Empire. And I'm just going to simply click on my material Empire, and it will go in and define that. Now, I would have to go through that same step with each of those heads so that each one had a shared parameter. But you can kind of see how that saved me time from having to go in and create each individual parameter it took me, I don't know, 30 seconds to go in and add those two shared parameters that I've already got defined for this particular family. And I applied it to that one, so I can go in and do it for any of the other types as well. And I know that it's going to come across, and when I go in and apply a particular material to it, it's going to go in and change all of those. So if I change my material empire here from this aluminum anodized red, and we go in and select a different material, I'll just go down here and pick some kind of random material. Let's see here. Ooh, how about a laminate? Navy laminate here. That's going to be the Empire's new colors there. Vader picked those out. All right, so you'll see that I'm getting more of a grayish look here. And that might be because a material hasn't been defined for it, or I haven't set the use render appearance. If you don't check that box, it'll default to that grayish material or grayish look to it. So make sure that is checked. So now when I go back to it, we get the blue look to it there. So let's get our preview on here. And let's see here, was that that's the R4 there. So I want to go in and specify those for the R4 unit. So as you can see, for each unit that I go in and create here, I could have a different type of material specified for each one. So this one will go back to that anodized red here, and the Rebellion in this one. Maybe something with some color here. Got enough blues and reds there. Oh, lead titanium. Again, this one might not have, oh, there we go. So getting different materials set here for each of the different units. So I can go in and specify different instances for each. Now, if you go in and start creating families and maybe you don't have a defined color, you can leave those empty. And what you're basically doing is you're letting the end user go in and set the material within the project. So they can be able to go in and click on that particular family, and they can go in and select whatever type of material that they have either in their project, or they could load in a different material there as well. If you are creating specific manufacturer type content and that manufacturer specs out a particular material, you should probably have that defined within there. Another thing that I do when I'm creating families is I clear out material types that are not going to be used within that particular family. So if we don't want to give the end user the option to change it to something totally different, you need to take that away from them. So for each of those, you can right click and you can delete a material out of there. And you can really scale down that list to really what you want it to show within that list there. Now, obviously that was accessing the material list. You know, while I'm in a family here, we can go to a project setting as well. To get to your materials, you can go to your Manage tab and click on Materials. And again, when you look at materials in a project setting compared to a family setting, a project setting, you're probably going to have a lot more materials listed within there because you have a lot more different families in a project. If you're on the architecture side, think of all the materials that are being defined for walls, for doors, for windows, ceilings, floors, roofs. You're going to see all those types of materials listed within there. But you also may want to go in and add more materials in a project setting. Whenever you load in a family that has different types of materials, you're also bringing in those materials into your project as well. So you're continually adding more and more to the project type setting there. So also within the material browser in the project setting, you have exactly the same setup within there. Again, you have your current set of materials, you got your library down at the bottom, and then you have your customization over on the right hand side here, where we're going to change the identity, graphics, appearance, physical, and thermal properties of different materials that are being used within the project. All right, so go back here. And I'm just going to take a look and see what we have here for questions. All right, so here we have a, not really question, but more of a statement. We do not allow users to edit the shared parameter files. We do have some parameters that can be used, like text 1, text 2, yes, no, etc., up to 10, each of the various types that can be used. So yeah, as far as the shared parameter files go, you do want to be very careful with that. You do not want to mess that file up. You don't want to have people actually opening up that text file and making modifications to it. What I've always told people, if I've created a shared parameter file for a company that I've implemented Revit for, I always tell them, make sure you have a backup of this. Put it somewhere safe where nobody can touch it. But I think in some instances for the shared parameter files, I think you could possibly make it more of a read-only instance for users that you do not want them to edit the file. But for people that are developing families for the company, you probably do want to have them have access to the shared parameter file. But obviously you want to make sure that they are aware that it is a very important file and to keep it safe. I also want to show you one other thing here in Revit. Let me go back to this here. Kind of a more, I guess, complete type shared parameter file, or more, maybe more complex type. Obviously I created this one from scratch, and we have accessories and materials here. But if I click on browse, I just want to show you a shared parameter file. This is actually from our MEP productivity pack. And if any of you have that, you probably know that, yes, there's a lot of parameters in there. There's I think well over 3,000. But this is a good parameter list to take a look at. If you do have the productivity pack, you can see that when I go in and click on groups here, it has very specific items listed, and they're used within a lot of the families and schedules within the productivity pack. So this is a very important file that contains a lot of information within there. Also, with the document, I want to actually pop it open here. So again, I don't recommend opening up these files and making modifications to it. Typically, I would only say maybe a BIM manager would go in and possibly make changes to this. I'm one that will go in here and make changes to it because I know what I'm doing. I know if I do something, it may mess it up. So if I'm ever going to go into the text file, I will always make a backup copy of it before I go in and start making modifications. Now this is the shared parameter file that I created for this session. And the most important thing that you see here is the thing that probably makes the little sense. And it's these letters and numbers right here. So this combination of letters and numbers, it's called the GUID number, is what defines that particular parameter there and what it stands for, how it's grouped, how it's visible. That's what each of these numbers are designating within here. But this is an exclusive number just for that particular parameter. And every time you create a new parameter, it generates a new GUID number. Now, I have never had an instance where it's duplicated that, because that is a long ID number there that it comes in totally random. But this is typically where you might take from a manufacturer that has created their own shared parameter, and they're sending this out so that you have the same shared parameters in your shared parameter files, theirs. You can copy and paste their line items in yours. I typically put them on the bottom, but the other thing that you want to make sure of is your group numbers. So every time that you create a group, it will create a new group number. And you want to make sure that if that other manufacturer has an accessory group, that it is also numbered 2. And that is going to be the first number that you see after what that parameter stands for. So as you can see here, we've got the 2s, we've got the 1s here, 2, 2, and 1. So if I brought in some additional ones and maybe their accessory number was 5, I would need to go in and change each of their 5s to a 2 to match mine. And it would work within your shared parameter file. A good way of checking it after you're done, so you've saved the new one. Remember, you've created a backup before this. Before you go in and do a step like this, make sure you create that backup. If you go to your shared parameter file and it shows your shared parameters, that means you've done it correctly. If this does not come up, that means you made a mistake when you went into that shared parameter. And you need to go in and check that text file and see where you made that mistake. Maybe you missed a grouping or something. But that is that's typically what happens with those type of instances. But again, I'm discouraging you to not go into the text file to make modifications. Again, that should truly be a BIM manager that knows what they're doing when they pop into that text file to make those modifications. All right. So in conclusion, so again, we went through a little bit from the previous webinars. I gave you the kind of the steps, the 10 steps as you're taking, as you're creating your families. We went through the shared parameters and also kind of blended the shared parameters with the materials in this instance. Kind of explained some of the uses of the shared parameters. Manufacturers, again, definitely use shared parameters to add a lot more of their data into families that they go in and create. We want to create shared parameters to keep consistency. Also, as you saw from my demonstration, I saved a lot of time because I had shared parameters already set up and I didn't have to go in and recreate them for each instance that I'd have to go in and place them in a different family. Also, having one shared text file should be used for the entire company. Again, don't create a shared parameter file for each project that you create. You're creating a shared parameter file for your company for all the projects that you go in and create. And then again, adding some materials. Again, being able to specify real world products from the manufacturer. If you are creating any type of manufacturing content, if a manufacturer does not have Revit content, go in and look at specs. Sometimes they have color patterns that you can grab from and be able to use on your Revit families. Materials obviously are going to be defined for renderings. We can either use the out-of-the-box library, or we can go in and create custom libraries, create our favorites, and obviously going in and creating additional materials for future use in families or within projects. So lastly, I want to thank you for sticking with me on the webinar series here. To be continued. We don't know. Maybe there will be some prequels. Look for me on LinkedIn. Add me. I post a lot there. I've also starting to get some white papers out there as well that some of you may want to check out. All right. So question here. Can you use two separate shared parameter files for one company? Electrical shared file and mechanical shared file, plumbing shared file. So this is something I would not recommend. And the reason being is that even though you are different disciplines, those disciplines do still share a lot of the same shared parameters. So keeping them in one file is the best option, but what you may want to do is you may want to group them. Be similar to what I showed you with the master shared parameter for the productivity pack. So there is electrical, mechanical, and plumbing all within there. And another thing to note is that when you're working in electrical or HVAC, sometimes those two kind of cross paths. So it may be needed that you have to have have one shared parameter and be able to access those same parameters there. All right, so another person says, I was told to never edit the shared parameter text files for fear of accidental corruption or GUID duplicate errors. I use the ATG shared parameter tools and it works great. So yeah, as I mentioned, again, I was discouraging people from going in there unless you absolutely know what you're doing when you're going in there. Again, typically it's going to be a BIM manager that will go in there. And again, you are making a backup copy before you go in and make any modifications with that. You do have the ATG shared parameter tools. It's part of the Revit Express tool, so that is an option as well if you do have that tool. So you can go in and modify them within there. And we have another one here. How would you set up a project-wide parameter that you can change if the project requires a change? All right, like if in the VE phase, the owner wants to change the base term for a project, could shared parameters switch out the families project-wide? Could it change detail families from one wall base type to another keynote used for the base? So if, let's say, a project parameter is set, or just a typical family parameter, so the default setting, you can go in and change that family parameter to a shared parameter. If I pop this open here, so obviously this one is set as a shared parameter, but if I go on and click on edit here, and if this was set as a family parameter from the start, I can go in and switch it to a shared parameter and go in and select it and then select which parameter that I want to be defined within there. I don't believe it's going to be able to change all of the families in a project, however. So you would have to go in and change that per family. But if it obviously changed a lot of objects within a project, that would obviously be beneficial to go in and change that to the shared parameter instead. All right, general Revit question here. I've always been told to not click on a thumbnail from the open screen, but to open from Explorer directory. Will opening a file from the file thumbnail image on the open splash page create issues? Well, that depends upon which version of Revit that you're using. So I'm just gonna go ahead and save this out here. I'm gonna close this. So my home page here. So I'm in 2021, and I believe this changed in 2019 or 2020. But within that release, it allowed the users to go in and click on the image of a project within here, even if it is a cloud project. So if you're working in BIM 360, you can actually click on the file here. As you can see, this one is a BIM 360 project here. So I could go ahead and click on it and be able to open up a new local file from that. So that is an option. In the older versions, yeah, I would totally discourage from that. You typically want to go to open and go out to that particular file and open it from there. All right, so it looks like that is all of the questions. So we are going to wrap it up here. Again, thank you everyone for attending, and we'll look for you on the next webinar.